Welcome to Module 4 of the Prep-It instructional presentations. This is part of a series of presentations on the use of the various features in the PREP Implementation, Planning, Monitoring, and Evaluation tool, or Prep-It. Prep-It is a decision-making and analysis tool with several interrelated modules used for target setting, costing, and commodities forecasting. This presentation is the fourth in a series of presentations on the features and functions of Prep-It. Once the priority population and methods are specified, we need to have an understanding of how long individuals stay on PREP. For this, we turn to the continuation module. First, it is useful to review the different stages of PREP use by clients as they are conceptualized within Prep-It. This is represented by the figure shown here. Prep-It assumes a finite population of clients indicated for PREP. When members of this population begin taking PREP for the first time, this is referred to within Prep-It as an initiation. While clients continue to take PREP, they remain in the bucket, which we call continuation. If they pause or discontinue using PREP or do not return for their refill visits on time, then they leave the bucket. Sometimes those who have previously stopped taking PREP or missed a visit begin taking PREP again, which we refer to as reinitiations. Method switching would be counted as discontinuation and reinitiation within this model. In Prep-It, the concept of continuation is defined as the proportion of PREP clients that are returning for their refill visits on schedule at 1, 3, 6, and 12 months after initiation. These 4 data points generate a continuation curve that is then used to calculate the number of PREP users over time. The continuation curve is a key input in Prep-It and that factors into the calculations on how much PREP is needed each month, how much coverage can be reached for a given population, and estimated program costs and impacts. Here you can see the 4 data points are represented in a graph, showing the pattern of decline in continuous PREP use since initiation. In the chart, you can also see how the data points calculate the average months of PREP needed per person initiated, the average months of product distributed per person initiated, and the average months of product distributed per person using beyond the first month. Different data sources can be used to generate continuation rates, with some PREP data systems being better suited than others for extracting data on continuation. Client-level data, where individuals are tracked by visit, are needed to accurately calculate continuation rates. These type of data often exist in systems that use individual electronic records for PREP clients, and thus those systems can usually output continuation rates. Unfortunately, aggregated PEPFAR data, like PrepNew and PrepCT indicators, that capture the total number of initiation and continuation visits do not allow for calculating continuation rates because they do not indicate the duration of PREP use or whether coverage gaps occurred. For those who do not have access to individual client data needed for continuation rates, Prep-It provides some options, which we'll review on the subsequent slides. When deciding the data sources for continuation rates, one can follow the figures shown here. If national electronic individual PREP records are available, these should be used to generate your continuation rates. If these data are not available at the national level, but an implementing partner has PREP records in this format, then the implementing partner data should be used. If there are no electronic individual PREP records to work with, and you have the time and resources to extract a sample of client records that can be entered into the Prep-It continuation calculator, then this approach is preferable. Note that more information on how to use the Prep-It continuation calculator is available at the end of this presentation. Finally, if none of the prior options are available, one can use the Prep-It default continuation rates, which are based on prior implementation studies. Here you can see the default continuation rates, which come from different PrEP demonstration studies. These can be used and adapted in the absence of other sources of continuation data. If you have continuation data, you should replace these continuation curves with your data to reflect the realities of your program. You can also add more curves by clicking on the plus sign in the tool. Note that you need at least one continuation curve for PrEP-IT to work, but you do not need a separate curve for each population. Also note that if you use the default continuation curves, it's preferable if you can enter your best estimate of the proportion of the population using PrEP at 12 months. This will enable the tool to account for PrEP use beyond 1 year. In this hypothetical example, two curves were generated using program data. The first curve is for serodifferent couples. Note that PrEP-IT treats serodifferent couples differently than other populations, since partners only need to be taking PrEP until the time the HIV-positive partner is virally suppressed. The second curve is for key populations. The graph shows you PrEP continuation starting from 100% at initiation in month 0 and decreasing over time. Once you've established your continuation curve or curves, you then apply them to each priority population and method using the drop-down lists. Here you can see that serodifferent couple curves were used for serodifferent couples, and key population curves were used for the other 4 priority populations. If oral and CAB PrEP had different continuation patterns, you could specify different curves for the different methods. Here that information was not yet available, and thus the same curve was applied to each method. The next slide will show a demonstration of the continuation inputs in PrEP-IT. So in the previous video, we specified our populations and methods. And then as an example, let's say you saved your work and now you want to continue and start working on the continuation. In this case, I'm going to upload the session I had before from yesterday. And now it's taking me right to the continuation where I left off. So this is the continuation page. It starts off with some default data that are based on demonstration projects and other studies of PrEP continuation. For details on where these numbers come from, they're in this box here. So you can see sort of the sources as well as the values for different types of populations and their different continuation rates. These values can be useful if you really have no idea on what your continuation rates are for your program and you do not have the data available to calculate it yourself. As I mentioned, there is a continuation calculator, and we'll discuss that in the next couple of slides, that you can use if you do have person level data that you want to calculate yourselves. So ideally, you're going to be adapting the defaults based on your own program or your own data. So in this example, I'm going to be doing that. And what we'll do is we'll be overwriting some of these defaults so that we can use our own data as we move forward. So I'm going to start with the serodifferent couples. And remember, it's important to always have serodifferent couples in the top line because the program treats this differently and it's looking to the top line for information on your serodifferent couples in this tool. So I'm going to say in my program, it's quite similar, but the continuation rates are a bit different as we go through, and I'm just overwriting them as one might do so. Okay. Next, I'm going to say that I have information on adolescent girls and young women on my program. You can see based on the defaults, compared to serodifferent couples. They tend to use PrEP. The continuation tends to be lower. And in my data, that is also the case, but not quite the same as it is here. And note that the default here has 0 for 12 months. That's because this study did not follow them that we're using out to 12 months. But it is really in your best interest to put some sort of value or best guess as how many of your population stay on PrEP for an entire year. So I'm going to, based on our data, we have 5%. Now I'm going to delete these remaining continuation curves because we don't have existing data on that. In this hypothetical program, all we know is everybody else is lumped into one group, and so we're going to put in their continuation rates here. So those are our 3 curves, and we can see how they look in the graph below. And this is continuation over time based on those data points that we've entered. And you can see that based on those information, it calculates the average month per person initiated of PrEP, how much PrEP product is distributed, and also PrEP product distributed per person who have continued for at least 1 month. Okay. So now that we've defined our curves, next we're going to assign them. So you can see that the tool, it has already brought in 0 different couples for both pill and CAB PrEP and brought over the AGYW curve for that population. But I need to use this drop-down menu for all the others to choose the appropriate curve. So I'm selecting this here. It's possible that you will have a different continuation curve for different types of methods. So this will allow you to specify and apply different curves to different methods. Right now we're using the same curve for the 2 methods we have in this particular application. So those are the inputs for continuation. And then we'll move on next and we'll talk more about the continuation calculator. For those who do not have continuation data and would like to estimate their continuation rates using a sample of client records, there is the continuation calculator tool. This is available on Prep-It for download. The continuation calculator is an optional Excel-based tool that uses a sample of client records from clients who have initiated PrEP at least a year ago, and ideally 2 or more years ago. To use the tool, you specify the priority populations and the gap in PrEP coverage that defines a discontinuation. Then for each client, you enter the data on the priority population they belong to, the date they initiated PrEP, and the number of days drug supply they were given. Then for each subsequent visit, you enter the date and the number of days of drug supply given. Based on this data, the tool outputs the continuation rates and the percent reinitiated for each priority population. Here is some example data from the continuation calculator. For inputs, this shows you need to have 1 person per row and indicate the priority population, if that information is available, the date they initiated, and the number of days of drug supply that they were given. Then, every time they return, the date they returned and the number of days of drug supply are recorded in the same row. There is space in the workbook for up to 14 visits, and ideally you would have a good sample of rows to aggregate the results. The example results show the continuation rates that could then be directly entered into Prep-It. Back at the Prep-It continuation module, if we are interested in using our own client level data to estimate the continuation curves, we can utilize this continuation calculator. And this will tell you that it's an Excel workbook, that can be used to analyze client level data to generate the percent of the population continuing to take PrEP at months 1, 3, 6, 12, and even 18 and 24 months after initiation if that data are available. So you can download the continuation calculator and save it to your desktop or wherever you save. So you'll see several tabs. The first two tabs are the cover page and the instructions, and we really get started in our data entry on the Specify Populations tab. So that's where we're going to input our priority populations. I'm going to choose some populations here. I'm also going to specify a custom population. And here I will use clients, I mean mostly like clients of sex workers. If you only had one population, so you don't have it broken down by priority population, but you still want to know, you could put a custom group and have it just be all clients. That's another option if you don't have your data distinguished by the different priority populations. But if you do, it's very helpful because we know that continuation differs by priority population frequently. There are tabs for oral, ring, and CAB PrEP if you have different data by different method. For now, I'm only going to focus on the oral PrEP. And so we'll move to that tab. And the first thing that we need to do on this sheet is specify the number of days after a missed appointment that you'd be considered a discontinuation. So if you're supposed to come back after 30 days, how many days after that are we considering you taking a break in PrEP or discontinuing PrEP? And there can be different ideas on what this would be. I'm going to specify 2 weeks or 14 days for this particular application. One feature that was requested is whether or not you want to analyze the reasons for discontinuation. So if you're following your clients very closely, you might know that they didn't come back, but you might know why. And so you can specify that and track that as well. Most people don't have that data, but you can enter those here if you do have that. So now we're ready to enter in our client level data. I'm going to just start with an ID number. And then if you wanted to track by year, you can enter the birth year, although that's not required. And now you want to select your priority population for this individual. If you were tracking discontinuation or reasons for not returning, you would enter that here. But now what you need to say is the date that they initiated. So I'm assuming this is some old data. So I'm putting June 1st, 2018, and that this individual was given 30 days of drug supply. And now I need to know, well, when did they come back and how much drug supply were they given at each return visit? So as an example, let's say this person came back July 3rd, and we're given 90 days. Then they came back October 7th, and we're given 90 days. And then they returned January 1st, and we're given 90 days, and we didn't see them after that. And we have space for up to 14 different return visits. So it allows you to capture it over quite a long period of time, although many clients will not have that many return visits to capture. So basically now you want to have a sample of data like this, where you have the days that they initiated, the amount of drug supply, and then their return dates and drug supply. So that's the data that we're looking to extract. Once we have that, so let's say we do this for a sample, which I've sort of hidden them for now, then this tool takes that information and calculates your continuation rates. So here you can see that we have after 1, 3, 6, 12, 18, and 24. So those columns G and H, those aren't input into PrEP yet, but that is handy information for you to know in the future going forward. But this is data then you can copy and paste right into Prep-It for these results. So returning to Prep-It now, you can see how you would enter this data in here that you've generated from your continuation calculator. So that's generally how that process works. Thank you very much. For more information on continuation and other functions of Prep-It, please join the Prep-It community of practice. You can enter questions with the hashtag continuation so that others can learn from your question as well.